And we're live.
We'll call the special meeting of the West Ada School Board Trustees in order on February 18th at 5:30 p.m. Clerk Newbold, are there any, oh, excuse me, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance first. So with that, if we'll have everybody mute their mics and recite the Pledge of Allegiance before we get started on the meeting. All right, thank you everyone for joining us today. Clerk Newbold, are there any changes or adjustments to the additional information for the agenda?
Madam Chair, Trustees, Superintendent Reynolds, the only thing that I will add after the meeting is the attachment that Mr. Roberts will be sharing with us tonight.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Just for purposes on kind of how we're working on the meeting, I'm just going to ask, you don't have to, but if we can use our videos when we're talking, if you can't tonight, just for future reference, it's really nice to see faces, especially when I'm trying to call on different or pick up different trustees. So appreciate anybody who's willing to do it tonight, and we'll see if we have more remote meetings if we use them. But with that, I will turn it over for discussion to start us off with Mr. Roberts.
Dave, you're muted.
Let's start over. Thank you, Madam Chair, Trustees, Superintendent Reynolds. I'm going to share my screen right now with the red line version of let's see if I can do it. Can you all see the screen now?
Yes, I can.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so this is the red line version. I sent it to you earlier today, not much earlier today. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it. This is built off of the February 16th version of the job description that I had sent earlier and asked for individual comments on. I think this is reflecting many of those comments that were placed in there. I think we've got a pretty good document that I think embodies the requests that I've received. And so I don't know if you want me to go through it in detail, but this is what we have. I do have a final document that I can share as well with these red lines accepted, but I wanted you guys to see this so you know the changes that were made to that 216 document.
Mr. Roberts, would you just walk us through any substantial changes? It looks like there's some wording changes and then some substantial ones, or maybe some more just content ones. So, Madam
Chair, yes. So initially in the vision and values, there's really just changing a word from maintains to fosters a relentlessly positive approach to helping others realize their potential. In instruction and leadership, it's really changing the word, removing some prepositions and changing language to read more clearly, I think, in those areas. And some structure change in the last bullet on instructional leadership. There, again, in community engagement, we're changing plural on cities and counties to match. Again, taking a preposition out and changing the language of that sentence. And then we did add the second to last bullet and the last bullet kind of guides this, but adding some language that was specifically from the Bismarck, North Dakota job description, adding actively involves community and internal stakeholders in advisory capacity for operational planning. In management and operations, really just minor changes again to language. Small change in competency requirements, or I guess the last sentence in the competency requirements came because that making this language match the language of our CIP, our continuous improvement plan. So we changed that from beliefs, mission statement, objectives, and parameters to mission, values, beliefs, and goals, which are the 4 categories of our continuous improvement plan. Essential skills, just changing again, changing the wording of some sentences in a minor way. The evaluation, it looks like it's a big change, but it really is not. It's just rewording that sentence that reads a little bit more clearly. And the same with the starting of the terms of employment, and then just some minor changes there, adding annually on the national conference on there, and that's about it.
Thank you. I wanted to, before we open up for questions, I wanted to have the two trustees that worked on this give Trustee Kloppenstein and Trustee Buffy the floor to see if they had anything else they wanted to add from their perspective, because they spent some time working through this. You guys are good?
Madam Chair, I'm fine myself. I think there's I made some different other changes, but this is fine. I'm happy to go forward with this.
Okay.
Chair, sorry, can you hear me?
You're good. We can, and we can see you too.
Okay, so I just want to clarify. So when the document was shared, mine is not seeing it. All it's showing is connecting Robert's Dave, and I can see Mr. Roberts' photo, but I just want to confirm that I've been following the document that was sent to the board before the board meeting, so I think I'm following. And of course, I support this job description because it is based off of what I drafted originally, so I like it a lot. I think I think it's great. So
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions from trustees?
Madam Chair, this is Rusty.
Trustee Rusty. You have the floor.
Yes, no, I don't. I agree. I was not obviously involved in doing the bulk of it here, but Trustee Buffy and Kloppenstein, I mean, this is a really, really good document. So, you know, appreciate your efforts in kind of getting the bulk of this to us. And I think it reads really, really well. And as I read over the other ones from other districts and things, you know, this is, I think, above and beyond all the rest of those. So thank you for your hard work, and I'll be supporting it.
Okay, thank you.
This is Trustee Ozuna. I agree with the feedback given by Trustee Kofeld. I think this is well done, and I support it as well.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Roberts, I had one quick question for you, and I wish I'd have caught it earlier. In the, I think it's at the very end around the contract days, is that standard to put in a job description, or do we want to leave ourselves some flexibility there? Does that lock us in?
Dave, you're muted.
Thank you. In the education world, that is standard. The educational world operates different than the private world. When you have a salary, you know, generally for a 260-day work year, and there's vacation, there's other benefits that happen. In the education world, contract days are important in many different ways. One is there is a calendar that they follow that are expected to be work days. Most of our administrators exceed those days, but it does define a daily rate of pay that is important for PERSI when you retire, and that's very important. And so I do think it's good information that needs to be in there. And I would say in the Valley and districts around, that varies by administrator, and I think it does provide valuable information that applicants will want to know.
Okay. The reason I asked the question is because we don't put our salary in there, but we put it that, so that I was just curious if they wanted to negotiate that, does that lock us in? Madam Chair,
Again, I don't if they want to come back and negotiate days along with salary, I think the board would have the ability to negotiate anything they wanted to in that respect. So I don't think it necessarily locks us in, but that's the same calendar that most district administration is on currently, and would be consistent with how we've done in the past with their superintendent. But I don't think it totally locks you in if somebody wanted to negotiate something different as far as days go.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions, comments before we move on to action? Oh, actually, there is one other piece.
Yeah, let's talk about the salary recommendation. And I don't know, Trustee Beth, if you want to speak to this, or do you want me to start? So we really, I think originally I brought, kind of 170 to 200,000. I know Trustee Buffy brought up 170 to 190,000. We have consulted with our CFO, Jonathan Gillen, and we've really kind of come to the conclusion that we think 170 to 190,000 is a good range. I think that range will attract the candidates that we want for the job. I think it's a fair range, and I do think that there's, just for our staff and where it's at, that having a 2 in front of the number may not go over as well, and so we think that's a good range to post it as, between 170 and 190,000.
Any questions or comments? I have one. I guess what I wanted to know was, when we looked at that information, did we feel like the 200,000 wouldn't get us, or would be a detriment to our budget? And the reason I'm asking the question is because I want to know kind of what our methodology was behind the 190 versus 200. If we had, because when I looked out at some of those websites that ISBA has been sending us, like an ASA, the salary ranges that are there, and not everybody has one, are sitting in that $175,000 to $200,000 range for districts that are similar in size to us nationwide. So I guess I want to make sure we feel pretty confident we can get a good set of national applicant pool with that salary range.
Madam Chair, I think the methodology, it's not a budgetary issue. So if the board wanted to make that, to widen that range to 170 to 200, and Jonathan can speak up if he wants to, but that $10,000 is not going to make or break the budget on that. It really was more of a perception where we are in relation to other of our administrators and how we pay the rest of our administrators that could create morale issues and perception issues. And I guess if we had to adjust those, if that became an issue, then it possibly could become a budgetary issue.
Trustees, any comments or thoughts on salary range?
Madam Chair, this is Rusty.
Trustee Kofelt.
Yeah, I kind of share, I think, the premise behind your comment. I want to obviously follow along with wherever possible recommendations from staff, and definitely, our financial subject matter experts are far better equipped to review the budget than myself right now. But I think I would be a bit more supportive of that 200,000 at the top, for the reasons you mentioned, that I think it would perhaps just, I think it was mentioned at the last board meeting that it just, having that number there might just appeal to some additional people that wouldn't otherwise. And I get it's not going to break the budget, and I am sensitive to the perception thing, but we are a significantly large district, very complex district, and I think it would just give us a little flexibility. So that's just my comments.
Thank you. Trustee Ozuna, were you trying to come in there?
I was going to say something. I appreciate the feedback that Mr. Roberts gave, and I think that it is something that we need to be cautious about. So given that, I guess I'm curious if we were to go with a higher range and need to look kind of at all of the administrative positions, what would that look like? And would we be better off to, well, I guess we can't really pause on a decision, but yeah, I share the concerns that you brought up, Mr. Roberts. This is a comment more than a question.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Roberts, did you and Jonathan have a chance to look what is the gap between the rest of the administration in general and if we went with this higher salary range?
Madam Chair, I'm trying to think that, most of our salaries are calculated based on a salary schedule. And the only ones that really aren't are really the assistant superintendents and the superintendent. Superintendents negotiated, and then we've kind of set the assistant superintendent a couple of years ago, and it's just had increases based on increases in the budget on an annual basis, if there were any. For example, this year there were no increases. So I can't think off the top of my head what our assistant superintendents are at. 130th range, 140 range, some kind of around that range. I think our region directors range from 115 to 120-ish range. It's kind of like that. Our principals in a school that work at 225 are kind of in the 105, 110, 112 range for numbers that are closest to that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Roberts, this is Trustee Ozuna. Do you have any idea what the difference is in other districts between the superintendent and the other administrators? Is it similar to what we have today?
Madam Chair, Trustee Ozuna, the closest one to compare is probably Boise. I haven't done a comparison. I did when the board hired Superintendent Reynolds. I did do a pretty comprehensive look at all the districts around us at their high administrative levels. I would say that in Boise in particular, the gap is much less. Their deputy, they only have one deputy superintendent, and I would have to look on their website to see what Deputy Superintendent Roberts makes, but it's a lot closer to, I think Kobe is about 180, right around that range, and I would guess she's 160-ish range. I know their director level are about the 149, their director level are at or above what our region or what our assistant superintendents are there. So their gap is closer. I can't speak, currently on, what Nampa or Caldwell or some of the other large districts are in the state as far as that gap goes. I know more about Boise's.
Thank you. And Trustee Ozuna, I think Dave, you can, or Mr. Roberts, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but prior to the most recent hire of the Blaine County superintendent, actually Blaine County superintendent, the prior one was the highest paid in the state until they just hired a new one. So they were actually the higher than Boise and West Ada.
Madam Chair, that's correct. And then there also was some other benefits in addition to that. And Blaine County, when they made their new hire, lowered the salary range, I think, to 168. And then those back benefits are no longer, they're trying to phase out of those benefits.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I have one, and I'll kind of echo what Trustee Kofelt said. I appreciate folks making a recommendation, and I do really consider it. I think where I'm sitting at is that that higher range gives us an option of an applicant pool, but it doesn't lock us into that salary range. So, so if people were doing a search online and they look for salaries up to 200,000, they'll get our search if we're in that range, even if they'll take 195 or 190. So from just a pure search standpoint is where I was coming at it, to give us just that extra leg on when somebody's looking. And then I think it will come down to the negotiations. That all being said, I think a superintendent's job when they get on board with us is, if they see that their salary range of their staff isn't in the right spot, we probably should be having some discussions around that, around whether or not it's comparable within the state. And then my third kind of reasoning is West State is the largest district by far. I mean, we're looking at what Boise being around 23, 25,000 and we're at 38. So there's a significant difference in the level of complexity with that, that I think we have to be cognizant of as we think about how we're recruiting for this going forward. We were pretty lucky that Superintendent Randles was where she was at when she was at there last time we hired a superintendent. We're not in that boat this time. There's a significant number of superintendent jobs out. I did go look a lot. So from a competitive standpoint, I just think we probably need to think about whether or not we want to make sure we have that competitiveness as we look out in the market. Any other questions, comments, thoughts before we move to action? All right, we will move over to the action portion of the agenda. And I think we need to adopt the actions that we need to have happen tonight, if we can get there, is to adopt the job description and the salary so that Mr. Roberts and the team can get that out and get a job posting out in the market. So with that, I'll open the floor for motions.
Madam Chair, Trustee Kofeld. Yeah, just a quick question. Do those need to be two separate motions, or are we tying them into one, or?
You can tie them into one if you want to, or you can make it both work. Both options work, but so we can do it in both. There is a risk that if somebody doesn't like the salary range, but they do like the job description, we just have to go through a second motion on it and split them, but we can do it either way.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we adopt the job description for superintendent as presented this evening, and I'll leave this motion just on the job description.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Trustee Buffy. The motion, is there any discussion on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Chairman votes aye. The motion carries 5-0. For the salary, now for the salary range, open it up for motions.
Madam Chair, this is Trustee Kofeld. I'll make a motion that we adopt a salary range for superintendent from 170,000 to 200,000.
Thank you. Is there a second?
This is Trustee Ozuna, and I'll second.
Thank you. The motion's been made for a salary range of 175 to 200,000, seconded by Trustee Ozuna. Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair, was that 170 or 175?
Oh,
Yes, I had said 170
okay.
Thank you.
to 200.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I stand corrected. Thanks, Sherry, for keeping, or Clerk Newbold for keeping me honest.
You're welcome.
Is there any other discussion? All right. Seeing, oh, Trustee Buffy, did you, I just saw you light up, so I want to make sure.
Yes, thanks. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have kind of, I guess, a couple concerns about the 20,000 number, just mostly because applicants, when they see that number, they think, oh, well, I have, you know, relevant experience, so I'll definitely be getting that higher starting wage. And I just feel like by going to 200, that we might run into applicants who back out of the process once you get to the salary negotiation. So I just worry a little bit about that. And I also worry about going too high just because of the difference. I know that nationally we're on the low end, but we also have different cost of labor, cost of living factors in. So I do truly believe that we will be able to recruit a very highly qualified superintendent between the 170 and 190 range. I don't think that advertising it to 200,000 is going to be a huge issue, but I do kind of worry about that, the points that I mentioned. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion or comments or questions?
Madam Chair, this is Ed.
Trustee Klopfenstein.
Thank you very much. I have to admit, I would join with, I wouldn't be able to approve this motion for myself just because I think I need to lean on the experience of staff. They're basically guiding us away partly for personnel issues, and I definitely want to respect that concern, so I'd be voting no.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none, we'll put the motion on the floor to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Are you, I didn't hear any ayes. Is everybody on mute? Sorry.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Aye.
Thank you. Chairman votes aye. Okay, all those opposed, please say nay.
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 I heard Trustee Buffy. Trustee
No.
Klopfenstein? Okay. Trustee Ozuna? Trustee Ozuna, sorry.
Nay.
Okay. Motion fails 3-2 or 2-3. All right, there are options for motions on the floor.
I'll make a motion, Madam Chair.
Motions are in order.
I move that we set the salary range from 170,000 to 190,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion's been made for the salary range to be 170,000 to 190,000, made by Trustee Buffy and seconded by Trustee Klopfenstein. Is there any discussion or questions? Seeing none, we'll put the vote to the floor. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Trustee Ozuna, did I?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. And Chairman votes aye. The motion carries 5-0. All right, we're set. Mr. Roberts, is there anything else you need on the superintendent job description?
Madam Chair, no, I think we're good to go.
All right, then I need one other motion.
Madam Chair, I'll move that we adjourn.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And Chairman votes aye. Motion carries 5-0. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.